The hallway stretched endlessly before her small feet, each step on the worn carpet muffled by the hum of the ancient radiator. Lena clutched the bundle tighter against her chest, feeling the rapid butterfly heartbeat through the thin blanket. Outside, rain lashed against the windows, turning the city lights into watery smears of yellow and red. The storm had soaked through her jacket during their journey, leaving her shivering despite the building's stuffy warmth. Shadows pooled in the corners where the hallway's dim bulbs couldn't reach. One flickered overhead, sending monstrous shapes dancing across the peeling wallpaper. The air smelled of dust and something else, something old and forgotten, like the boxes in Grandma's attic that nobody ever opened. "Just a little further, Leo," she whispered to the bundle, her voice barely audible over the baby's soft whimpering. Her arms ached from carrying him for so long, but she couldn't stop now, not when they were so close. The bundle shifted, and a tiny fist escaped the blanket. 5 perfect fingers, impossibly small against her own small hand. Lena tucked them back carefully, the way Mom had shown her before everything went wrong. Her sneakers squeaked against the linoleum as she approached the elevator at the end of the hall. It stood like a metal sentinel, its brass doors dull under the flickering light. The button glowed faintly, an island of light in the gloom. Lena shifted Leo's weight to one arm, stretching on tiptoes to press it. The sound echoed in the empty hallway, a hollow ding that made her jump. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frightened bird in a too small cage. She glanced back the way she had come, half expecting to see someone or something following them. But there was only the empty hallway, stretching back into darkness. Leo began to fuss, his tiny face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. Lena bounced him gently, the way Mom used to do. "Shh," she soothed, her breath warm against his forehead. "We're almost there. The prince will help us. He has to." The elevator groaned to life somewhere far below, its ancient mechanisms grinding upward. Each second stretched painfully. As Lena waited, her eyes darting between the elevator's floor indicator and the shadows behind her. The doors finally parted with a reluctant sigh, revealing a small wood-paneled box. The overhead light buzzed and flickered, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. A tarnished mirror hung on the back wall, reflecting Lena's pale face and wide eyes. She hesitated at the threshold. Mom's voice echoed in her memory, "Never get in elevators with strangers." But there were no strangers here, just her and Leo. And what waited above couldn't be worse than what lurked behind. Taking a deep breath that filled her lungs with the metallic scent of the elevator, Lena stepped inside. The floor swayed slightly beneath her feet, making her stomach lurch. She pressed herself into the corner, as far from the doors as possible, and shifted Leo to her other arm. Her muscles burned with fatigue. With her free hand, she reached for the panel of buttons. Most were ordinary numbers, worn from countless fingers, but the top button was different, unmarked except for an ornate V etched into the metal. Mom's instructions echoed in her mind. The very top floor. The prince lives there. He's the only one who can protect Leo now. Lena stretched, standing on tiptoes, her small fingers barely reaching the button. She pressed it, feeling it give under her touch with a soft click. The doors closed with agonizing slowness, sealing her in the tiny box. Then, with a jolt that made her gasp, the elevator began to rise. Floor by floor, the numbers illuminated above the door. 2, 3, 4. Each ding marking their ascent sent a fresh wave of fear through Lena's body. The elevator creaked and groaned around her, like some ancient beast awakening. Through the walls came the distant howl of wind as they climbed higher, leaving the safety of the ground far below. Leo stirred against her chest, making soft mewling sounds. His face, barely visible among the folds of the blanket, was flushed pink. Tiny beads of sweat dotted his forehead, despite the elevator's chill. "Almost there," Lena whispered, though she had no idea how many more floors remained. The numbered buttons ended at 20, but the elevator continued to climb. 21, 22, 23. The numbers no longer lit up, but she could feel the continued ascent in her stomach and ears. The mirror reflected her small form, dwarfed by the wooden panels surrounding her. Her dark hair hung in damp strands around her face, and her eyes seemed too large, too old in her young face. Behind her she imagined shapes forming in the grain of the wood, faces watching, judging. The elevator slowed suddenly, the change in momentum making Lena's knees buckle. She steadied herself against the wall, its cool surface grounding her. With a final, decisive ding, they stopped. For a moment nothing happened. Then the doors began to part, revealing a sliver of darkness beyond. The elevator opened onto a vast foyer that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Marble floors stretched into shadow, their polished surface gleaming faintly under hidden lights. The ceiling soared overhead, lost in darkness. Rain lashed against floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the city spread below, a carpet of lights obscured by sheets of water. Lena stood frozen in the elevator, Leo clutched to her chest. The air that wafted in was cool and smelled of something she couldn't name, like the pages of very old books and the metal taste before a storm. Silence pressed against her ears, broken only by the soft patter of rain against glass, and Leo's increasingly restless movements. Her voice emerged as a whisper, swallowed immediately by the vastness of the space. She tried again, louder this time. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer came. The foyer remained still, expectant, as if the very air was holding its breath. Gathering her courage, Lena took one small step forward, then another, leaving the relative safety of the elevator behind. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble, each sound painfully loud in the silence. A soft click behind her made her spin around. The elevator doors had closed, trapping her in this strange, silent place. Panic fluttered in her chest, a trapped moth beating against her ribs. "It's okay," she whispered to herself as much as to Leo. "We just need to find him." The prince. She moved deeper into the foyer, each step echoing. The space seemed to expand around her, making her feel smaller with every passing moment. Shadows clung to corners and pooled beneath furniture, sleek, angular pieces that looked as if they'd never been used. Leo began to cry in earnest, now his wails bouncing off the hard surfaces and multiplying until it seemed like a dozen babies were crying. Lena tried to soothe him, bouncing gently and making shushing sounds, but exhaustion had worn away her patience and skill. "Please," she called out, louder now, desperation edging her voice. "I need help. My brother needs help." A door opened somewhere in the darkness, a rectangle of deeper black appearing in the shadows. Footsteps approached, unhurried and deliberate. Lena froze, suddenly uncertain. What if Mom had been wrong? What if the prince wasn't a savior but something else entirely? A tall figure emerged from the darkness. He moved with fluid grace, each step precise and soundless, despite his considerable height. In the dim light, Lena could make out an elegant suit, charcoal grey against the pallor of his skin. His face remained in shadow, but she felt his gaze like a physical touch. "You are trespassing, child." His voice was soft yet carried effortlessly across the space between them. It held no accent she could place, yet sounded somehow foreign, each word precisely formed, as if language was a tool he had mastered rather than inherited. Lena swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. Leo's cries had subsided to whimpers, as if even he sensed the gravity of the moment. "Are you the prince?" she asked, her voice small but steady. The tall man tilted his head slightly, a gesture both elegant and predatory. He took another step forward, and light caught his features, sharp cheekbones, a straight nose, and eyes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the dim illumination. "Some have called me that," he acknowledged, "though I prefer Adrian to those who enter my home uninvited." His gaze dropped to the bundle in her arms, and something flickered across his face, too quick for Lena to identify. "What have you brought into my house, child?" "The prince," Adrian asked, his voice suddenly taut, like a wire about to snap. Lena gathered her courage, remembering Mom's final instructions. She took a step forward, arms aching with the weight of her brother and responsibility. "His name is Leo," she said. "Leo Vance, and he needs your protection." The name hung in the air between them. Adrian went utterly still, a statue carved from marble and shadow, for several heartbeats. The only sound was the rain against the windows and Leo's soft breathing. Then Adrian moved, covering the distance between them with inhuman speed. He loomed over Lena, tall as a building from her perspective, his presence stealing the air from her lungs. "Who sent you?" he demanded, voice barely above a whisper yet somehow more frightening than a shout. "Who gave you that name?" Lena's legs trembled, but she stood her ground. "My mum," before they took her. Adrian's eyes narrowed. With deliberate slowness, he crouched down, bringing himself to Lena's level. Even kneeling, he towered over her. His face, now fully visible, was beautiful in the way that winter was beautiful, perfect, pristine, and deadly. "Show me," he commanded softly. With trembling hands, Lena pulled back the edge of the blanket, revealing Leo's face. The baby blinked up at them with dark eyes, eyes that mirrored Adrian's own. The prince reached out one pale hand, hesitating just above the baby's cheek. His fingers were long and elegant, adorned with a single silver ring, bearing the same V that had marked the elevator button. "Impossible," he breathed, but his eyes told a different story. Recognition dawned there, followed by something fiercer, something protective and ancient. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, making Lena jump. Adrian's head snapped up, his attention shifting to the storm outside. His nostrils flared slightly, like an animal catching a scent. "They've followed you," he said, rising to his full height in one fluid motion. Before Lena could ask who they were, Adrian moved to a panel on the wall and pressed his palm against it. Immediately, metal shutters began to descend over the windows with a mechanical hum. Lights flickered on throughout the penthouse, revealing its true scale, a vast, luxurious space that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. "Victoria," Adrian called, his voice echoing through the apartment. A door opened, and a woman appeared, tall and elegant, with dark hair pulled into a severe knot. She took in the scene with a single glance, her expression shifting from surprise to alarm. "My lord?" she questioned, her eyes fixed on the bundle in Lena's arms. "Secure the perimeter," Adrian ordered. "Protocol 7. No one enters, no one leaves." Victoria nodded once and disappeared the way she had come. Throughout the penthouse, Lena heard the sound of locks engaging, heavy, definitive clicks that sealed them inside. Adrian turned back to Lena and Leo, his face transformed. What had been cold detachment was now fierce intensity. He approached them again, this time extending his arms. "Give him to me," he said, and though his voice was gentle, it was not a request. Lena hesitated, tightening her grip on Leo. After everything they'd been through to get here, the thought of letting him go, even for a moment, made her chest constrict painfully. "I promised Mom I wouldn't let anyone take him," she said, her voice small but determined. Something like respect flickered in Adrian's eyes. "You have protected him well," he said, "but I must confirm what I suspect. I will not harm him. You have my word." Lena searched his face, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, she slowly, reluctantly, extended her arms, transferring Leo's weight to the prince's waiting hands. Adrian cradled the baby with surprising tenderness, his movements sure despite what Lena suspected was lack of practice. He studied Leo's face intently, then gently with one finger traced the shape of the baby's brow, nose and chin, as if memorizing him by touch. Leo, who had been fussy in Lena's arms, quieted immediately. His tiny hand escaped the blanket again, this time wrapping around Adrian's finger with surprising strength. The prince went still, his eyes widening slightly. Then, with deliberate care, he pulled back the blanket further, revealing a small birthmark on Leo's shoulder, a crescent shape, like a new moon. Adrian's breath caught. When he looked up at Lena again, his eyes had changed, the dark irises now ringed with an impossible amber glow. "Where is his mother?" he asked, his voice tight with controlled emotion. Lena felt tears prick at her eyes for the first time since they'd begun their journey. "They took her. The men with the red eyes. She told me to bring Leo to you. She said you'd protect him because—" She hesitated. "Because what, child?" Adrian prompted, his glowing eyes fixed on her face. "Because he's your son," Lena whispered. The words hung in the air between them. Adrian looked down at the baby in his arms, at his son with an expression of wonder and fierce possession. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, becoming deeper, older somehow. "Yes," he said simply. "He is mine." With Leo still cradled in one arm, Adrian moved to the control panel again. More locks engaged throughout the penthouse, the sound like the turning of great keys in ancient doors. The lights dimmed slightly, taking on a reddish hue. Adrian turned back to Lena, his tall figure casting a long shadow across the marble floor. His eyes still glowed with that strange amber light, and when he smiled, she caught a glimpse of teeth too sharp to be entirely human. "You aren't going anywhere," he said, his voice both a promise and a threat. "Neither of you." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. The prince's words echoed in the vast penthouse, bouncing off marble and glass. She took a half-step back, her sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. "You mean we can stay?" she asked, her voice small in the cavernous space. Adrian's expression softened, though the amber glow in his eyes remained, casting eerie shadows across his aristocratic features. "Child, you have brought me something precious beyond measure, something I never thought possible." His gaze returned to the infant in his arms. "You both will remain under my protection." The baby, Leo, squirmed in his blanket, tiny fists punching at the air. One caught in Adrian's silk shirt, and the prince froze, staring down at the miniature fingers clutching the expensive fabric. "He needs to eat," Lena said, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Her backpack felt heavier now, the adrenaline of their escape fading into bone-deep exhaustion. "There's formula in my bag. His mother packed it." Adrian nodded, still transfixed by the child. "Victoria," he called, his voice carrying through the penthouse without raising its volume. The woman who had escorted them appeared from a shadowed hallway. Her movements were fluid, graceful, but Lena noticed how her eyes widened at the sight of the prince holding a baby. "My lord?" Victoria's voice held a question, her gaze darting between Adrian and the children. "Prepare the East Wing guest suite for our young visitor," and Adrian paused, looking down at Leo with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. "And prepare the chamber adjacent to mine for the child." Victoria's composure slipped for just a moment. "The nursery, sir. It hasn't been opened I am aware." Adrian cut her off, his tone brooking no argument. "See to it immediately, and bring whatever supplies infants require." Victoria bowed slightly and disappeared, her footsteps fading into the vastness of the penthouse. Lena's legs trembled beneath her. Now that they had arrived, now that Leo was safe with his father, the weight of their journey crashed down upon her small shoulders. 2 days of running, hiding, snatching moments of sleep on buses and in the back of the kind truck driver's cab who'd given them a ride when he found Lena walking along the highway with a baby in her arms. "You're exhausted," Adrian observed, his voice gentler than before. He gestured to a plush sofa nearby. "Sit. You're safe now." Lena sank onto the cushions, her body seeming to melt into the softness. The leather was cool against her skin, smelling faintly of something exotic and expensive. "What about the men with the red eyes?" "They were looking for us. They took Leo's mom." Adrian's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath the pale skin. "Lord Julian Cross and his followers will not breach these walls. This place is fortified against their kind." "Their kind?" Lena echoed, confusion furrowing her brow. "Aren't they like you?" A smile touched Adrian's lips, revealing again those teeth that seemed too sharp, too predatory to belong in a human mouth. "Not all of our kind are the same, child. Just as not all humans are the same." Before Lena could ask what he meant, Victoria returned, pushing a cart laden with bottles, formula, diapers and other baby necessities. Behind her came 2 men in dark suits, carrying what looked like a disassembled crib. "The nursery will be ready within the hour, my lord," Victoria said, her eyes carefully avoiding the baby in Adrian's arms. "Shall I prepare the formula?" Adrian nodded, then looked down at Leo with an expression of sudden uncertainty. The confidence that had radiated from him moments before wavered, like a candle flame in a draught. "Perhaps," he began, then looked at Lena. "Perhaps you should show me how. I am unfamiliar with such matters." Lena slid off the sofa, approaching the cart. The normality of the task, something she'd done countless times for Leo, anchored her in this strange new reality. "You need to wash your hands first," she instructed, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "Then you mix the powder with warm water, not hot, or it'll hurt his tummy." Adrian watched intently as she demonstrated, his amber-ringed eyes following her small hands as they measured and mixed. When the bottle was ready, she held it out to him. "You should feed him," she said. "He's your son." Something flashed across Adrian's face. Fear, perhaps, or wonder. He shifted Leo in his arms, cradling him in the crook of his elbow as Lena showed him. When he took the bottle, their fingers brushed, and Lena gasped at the coldness of his skin. "You're freezing," she said without thinking. "Yes," Adrian replied simply, guiding the bottle to Leo's eager mouth. The baby latched on immediately, tiny hands coming up to press against the plastic. "My kind runs cold." Lena wanted to ask what he meant by "my kind," but exhaustion was pulling at her eyelids, making them heavy. The rhythmic sound of Leo's suckling, the dim reddish lighting, and the knowledge that they had reached their destination combined to make staying awake nearly impossible. Adrian noticed her swaying on her feet. "Victoria will show you to your room," he said. "Rest now. We will speak more when you wake." Victoria stepped forward, extending a hand to Lena. "Come, child. You've had a long journey. Lena hesitated, looking at Leo. But the prince will care for the young heir, Victoria assured her, though something in her tone suggested she found the idea unusual. Your brother will be safe. He's not my brother, Lena murmured, even as she allowed Victoria to lead her away. I just promised his mum I'd keep him safe. Victoria's hand was warm on her shoulder, guiding her down a long hallway lined with artwork that seemed to move in the corners of Lena's vision. And you have done so admirably. Few would have succeeded in bringing a child to the prince undetected. The guest suite was larger than Lena's entire apartment back home. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in midnight blue silk. The windows were covered with heavy drapes of the same color, blocking out the city lights beyond. The bathroom is through there. Victoria indicated a door to the left. Clean clothes will be brought for you. Is there anything else you require? Lena shook her head, overwhelmed by the luxury surrounding her. No, thank you. Victoria nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the door. The prince is not accustomed to children, she said, her back to Lena. He may seem cold, but bringing the child here was the right choice. The only choice, if you wished him to live. Before Lena could respond, Victoria was gone, the door closing with a soft click behind her. Alone in the vast room, Lena sank onto the bed, her small frame nearly swallowed by the plush mattress. Despite her exhaustion, despite the softness surrounding her, sleep remained elusive. The events of the past days played through her mind like a fragmented film reel. Leo's mother, Sarah, bleeding from a wound at her throat, pressing the baby into Lena's arms. Take him to his father, she had gasped, her eyes wild with fear. Adrian Vance, the prince, in the glass tower on the north side. He'll protect Leo. He must. The men with red eyes who had come after them, moving too fast, their skin too pale in the moonlight. The way they had sniffed the air like hunting dogs, tracking them through the city streets. And now, here she was, in the home of a man who was clearly not human himself, a man with glowing eyes and teeth too sharp, who had called Leo his son, and looked at the baby with such fierce possessiveness that it had made Lena shiver. Despite the questions swirling in her mind, exhaustion eventually claimed her, pulling her down into a deep, dreamless sleep. When Lena woke, the room was still dark, the heavy drapes blocking any indication of whether it was day or night. A digital clock on the bedside table read 7:42, but she couldn't tell if it was morning or evening. Clean clothes had been laid out at the foot of the bed, jeans and a sweater that looked approximately her size, along with new socks and underwear still in their packaging. A pair of slippers waited on the floor. After a quick shower in the marble bathroom, which had more buttons and settings than Lena had ever seen, she dressed and cautiously opened the bedroom door. The hallway outside was dimly lit, but she could hear sounds coming from somewhere in the penthouse. The clatter of dishes, murmured voices. Following the sounds, she found herself in a kitchen that gleamed with stainless steel and black granite. Victoria stood at the counter, preparing what looked like breakfast: eggs, toast, fruit arranged on a plate. Across from her, seated at a high island, was Adrian, with Leo cradled in one arm. The baby was awake, staring up at Adrian with wide, curious eyes. The prince was speaking to him in a low voice, in a language Lena didn't recognize, something musical and ancient sounding. "Good morning," Victoria said, noticing Lena hovering in the doorway. "Or rather, good evening. You slept through the day." Lena blinked, processing this information. "Is Leo okay? Did he sleep?" Adrian looked up, his eyes back to their normal dark color in the kitchen's bright light. "He is well. Victoria has been instructing me in his care." There was a stiffness to his posture, as if holding the baby required intense concentration. "You should eat," Victoria said, sliding the plate across the counter toward an empty stool. "You need your strength." Lena climbed onto the stool, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. She hadn't eaten a proper meal since before they fled with Leo. As she ate, she studied Adrian from the corner of her eye. In the brighter light, his inhuman qualities were less obvious, but still present: the unnatural stillness with which he held himself, the paleness of his skin, the way his dark eyes seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He wore another impeccable suit, this one a deep charcoal grey, the fabric so fine it seemed to shimmer when he moved. "The nursery is prepared," Adrian said, breaking the silence. "Though I find myself uncertain about many aspects of infant care, I can help," Lena offered between bites of toast. "I used to babysit Leo sometimes when his mom needed to work late." A shadow passed over Adrian's face at the mention of Leo's mother. "Sarah," he said softly, the name sounding like both a caress and a wound. "How did she come to entrust you with our son?" Lena put down her fork, the memory of that night turning the food in her mouth to ash. "She came to our apartment. She was hurt. Her neck was bleeding. She said bad men were after her, and Leo, that they wanted to take him because he was special." Lena swallowed hard. "She gave me money and Leo's bag and told me to bring him to you. She said you'd know what to do." "And these men with the red eyes," Adrian pressed, his voice carefully controlled. "Did they speak to you? Did they say what they wanted with the child?" Lena shook her head. "They just kept coming. We barely stayed ahead of them. One almost caught us at the bus station, but then the sun came up and he backed away." Adrian and Victoria exchanged a look that Lena couldn't interpret. "Julian Cross has always been a purist," Adrian said to Victoria, his tone bitter. "The idea of a half-human child with royal blood would be an abomination to him." "The old laws are clear, my lord," Victoria replied quietly. "If the child bears the crescent mark—" "I know the laws," Adrian cut her off, his voice sharp, then gentler. "The laws are what they are, but times change, Victoria. Perhaps we must change with them." Leo began to fuss in Adrian's arms, his tiny face scrunching up in preparation for a cry. Adrian looked down at him with an expression of alarm, as if the baby had suddenly transformed into something dangerous. "He's probably wet," Lena said, sliding off her stool. "Do you want me to change him?" Relief flashed across Adrian's face. "If you would." Lena took Leo from Adrian's arms, noting again how cold the prince's skin was. Leo immediately calmed at her familiar touch, his little hands reaching for her face. "Hey, buddy," she murmured, bouncing him gently. "Let's get you cleaned up, okay?" Victoria led them to the nursery, a room that clearly hadn't been used in decades, despite the fresh paint and new furniture. The walls were a soft grey, the crib a gleaming white. A rocking chair sat in one corner, near a window with the same heavy drapes that covered all the glass in the penthouse. As Lena changed Leo on the changing table, she noticed Victoria watching her with an unreadable expression. "You care for him," Victoria observed, "though he is not your blood." Lena shrugged, fastening the clean diaper with practiced ease. "He's just a baby. He needs someone to look out for him." Victoria's lips curved in a small smile. "The prince has not held an infant in a very long time. He may seem distant, but he will protect the child with his life. That much I know." "What is he?" Lena asked bluntly, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "And the men with the red eyes, what are they?" "They're not normal people." Victoria's smile faded. "It is not my place to explain such things. The prince will tell you what he wishes you to know. She turned to leave, then paused. But I will say this, in this world there are predators and prey. The prince is the former, as are those who hunt you. The difference is in how they choose to use their power. With that cryptic statement, she left Lena alone with Leo in the nursery. For the next several hours, Lena cared for Leo as she had during their journey, feeding him, rocking him to sleep, singing the lullabies she remembered from her own childhood. The nursery was well stocked with everything a baby could need, though some items still had price tags attached, suggesting they had been purchased in haste. As night deepened outside, though Lena could only tell by the digital clock on the wall, Adrian appeared in the doorway of the nursery. He had removed his suit jacket, and his white shirt gleamed in the soft lamplight. "Victoria tells me you have questions," he said, his voice low to avoid waking Leo, who slept peacefully in the crib. Lena nodded, sitting in the rocking chair. "Are you a vampire?" she asked directly, seeing no point in dancing around the subject. Adrian's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't seem offended. "That is one term humans have used for my kind, yes, though like most human classifications, it is imprecise. You drink blood?" "Yes, human blood." A pause. At times, Lena absorbed this, finding herself less frightened than she might have expected. After what she had seen over the past days, the confirmation seemed almost anticlimactic. And the men with the red eyes? They're vampires too? Adrian moved into the room, his movements silent on the plush carpet. He stopped beside the crib, looking down at his sleeping son. "Lord Julian Cross is of my kind, yes. He leads a faction that believes in maintaining the purity of our bloodlines. The mixing of human and vampire blood is controversial among my people." "Because of Leo," Lena said, understanding dawning. "Because his mum is human and you're not." Adrian nodded, one pale finger reaching down to touch Leo's cheek with infinite gentleness. "Sarah was special. I broke many of our laws by loving her. And now our son bears the crescent mark, the sign of royal lineage. Julian sees him as a threat to the old order. Will they keep coming after him?" Adrian's expression hardened, his eyes briefly flashing that amber color again. "They will try. But this place is warded against their kind. They cannot enter without invitation." Lena frowned, remembering something. "But you said they're your kind. How can it be warded against them but not you?" A ghost of a smile touched Adrian's lips. "Because this is my domain, child. My blood is in the very foundations of this building. The wards recognize me as their master." A shiver ran down Lena's spine at his words, at the casual way he spoke of blood and magic. "How old are you?" she whispered. "Old enough to have seen empires rise and fall," he replied, his gaze still on Leo. "Old enough to have believed I would never have a child of my own." Leo stirred in his sleep, one tiny hand escaping from his blanket. Without thinking, Adrian reached down to touch it, his long pale finger meeting Leo's palm. The baby's fingers instinctively curled around his father's finger. Adrian froze, his entire body going rigid. For a long moment he stood perfectly still, staring at the point where his skin met his son's. Then, with deliberate slowness, he withdrew his hand, stepping back from the crib. "What's wrong?" Lena asked, alarmed by his reaction. Adrian's face was a mask of control, but something raw lurked beneath the surface. "Nothing," he said, his voice tight. "It is merely overwhelming. The responsibility of it all." Before Lena could respond, a soft chime sounded throughout the penthouse. Adrian's head snapped up, his posture changing instantly from uncertain father to predatory alertness. "Stay here with Leo," he commanded, already moving toward the door. "Do not leave this room until I return." "What is it?" Lena asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "A breach in the outer perimeter," Adrian replied, his voice hardening. "It seems Lord Cross is testing my defenses sooner than anticipated." He disappeared into the hallway, leaving Lena alone with the sleeping baby. Heart pounding, she moved to the crib, standing protectively beside it. Outside the nursery, she could hear rapid footsteps, muffled voices giving orders. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, straining to hear any indication of what was happening. Leo slept on, unaware of the danger, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Finally, Adrian returned, Victoria close behind him. The prince's face was grim, his eyes now fully transformed to that amber color that seemed to glow from within. "They've found us," he said, without preamble. "Julian has brought a dozen of his followers. They're attempting to disable the wards on the east side of the building." "Can they get in?" Lena asked, her voice small. "Not easily," Adrian replied. "But Julian is resourceful and determined, and he has help. Someone with knowledge of my defenses." Victoria stepped forward. "My lord, we should move the children to the safe room." Adrian nodded. "Prepare it. I will join you shortly." As Victoria hurried away, Adrian approached Lena, kneeling down to meet her eyes. Up close, the amber glow was hypnotic, like looking into twin flames. "Listen carefully, Lena," he said, using her name for the first time. "Victoria will take you and Leo to a room deep within the penthouse. It is the most secure place here. You will remain there until I come for you. Do you understand?" Lena nodded, swallowing her fear. "What are you going to do?" A cold smile spread across Adrian's face, revealing teeth that were now unmistakably fangs. "I am going to remind Lord Cross why I am called the Prince." He rose to his full height, towering over her. "Take Leo now, follow Victoria, and do not look back, no matter what you hear." With trembling hands, Lena lifted Leo from his crib, wrapping him securely in his blanket. The baby stirred, but didn't wake, nestling against her chest. Victoria reappeared in the doorway. "This way, quickly." Lena followed her through a maze of hallways she hadn't seen before, deeper into the penthouse. They passed rooms filled with antiques, others with ultra-modern technology, all glimpsed briefly as they hurried past. Behind them, a crash echoed through the penthouse, the sound of breaking glass. Leo woke with a startled cry, his tiny voice piercing the tense silence. "Hurry," Victoria urged, her calm facade cracking. "They've breached the outer defenses." They reached a heavy door at the end of a hallway. Victoria pressed her palm to a panel beside it, and the door slid open to reveal a windowless room with concrete walls. Inside were basic supplies: water, food, a small cot, a changing table for the baby. "Get inside," Victoria instructed, ushering Lena through the doorway. "This room is reinforced with the strongest wards. Nothing can enter without the prince's permission." As Lena stepped into the safe room, another crash sounded, closer this time. Victoria's head snapped toward the noise, her face paling. "They're inside," she whispered. "How is that possible?" Before Lena could respond, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway, a tall man with pale skin and eyes that glowed a deep, bloody red. His lips curved in a cruel smile when he saw them. "The human familiar and the half-breed abomination," he said, his voice carrying easily down the corridor. "How convenient." Victoria pushed Lena further into the safe room. "Close the door," she hissed. "Now, but what about you?" Lena protested. "I serve the prince," Victoria replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "I will buy you time." She stepped back, reaching for the door control, but before she could activate it, the man with the red eyes moved, a blur of inhuman speed. Suddenly he was there, his hand closing around Victoria's throat. "Where is Vance?" he demanded, lifting her off her feet. "Where is the so-called prince?" "Right here, Julian," came Adrian's voice from behind them. Lena gasped as Adrian stepped into view. He had changed, his skin now so pale it seemed to emit a faint luminescence, his eyes burning with that amber fire, his fingers elongated into claw-like appendages. When he spoke, his voice resonated with power that made the air itself vibrate. "Release my familiar," Adrian commanded, each word like a physical force. Julian Cross, for this must be him, smiled, revealing fangs longer and crueler than Adrian's. The mighty Prince Vance, defender of humans and breaker of sacred laws. He tightened his grip on Victoria's throat. "Your time is over, Adrian. The council has ruled. The half-breed must die." Adrian's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the hallway plummeted, frost forming on the walls in delicate patterns. "The council has no authority here. This is my domain." Julian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Your domain. Look around you, Prince. Your sanctuary is breached. Your wards have fallen, and now I will take what is mine by right. The destruction of the abomination that threatens our kind." His red gaze fixed on Lena and the baby in her arms. Leo was crying now, his wails echoing in the concrete safe room. "The child bears the royal mark," Julian continued. "If allowed to live, he could claim leadership when he matures, a half-human ruling vampires. I will not permit it." Adrian took a step forward, his form seeming to grow larger, darkness gathering around him like a cloak. "You will not touch my son," he said, his voice no longer entirely human, "or the girl who protected him." Julian threw Victoria aside like a rag doll, her body crumpling against the wall. Then he turned to face Adrian fully, his own form changing, becoming more monstrous, his jaw elongating, his fingers extending into razor-sharp claws. "Then defend them if you can, Prince," Julian snarled. "But know that my followers are already inside your precious tower. This ends tonight." As if to punctuate his words, the lights throughout the penthouse flickered, then died, plunging everything into darkness. Only the glowing eyes of the two vampires remained visible, amber and blood-red, facing each other in the blackness. Lena clutched Leo tighter, backing deeper into the safe room. Through the open doorway, she could see more figures appearing in the hallway behind Julian, pale shapes with glowing red eyes, moving with that same unnatural speed. Adrian glanced back at her, his amber eyes meeting hers for one intense moment. In that gaze, she saw something unexpected, not just the fierce protectiveness of a father for his child, but something like an apology. Then he turned back to face Julian and the approaching vampires. The darkness around him deepened, spreading outward like spilled ink. When he spoke again, his voice was barely recognizable, a deep, multi-toned rumble that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You wanted the prince, Julian," Adrian said as his form began to change, his silhouette warping and growing in the darkness. "Let me show you what that truly means." The shadows exploded outward, and in their midst Adrian transformed completely, his human appearance giving way to something ancient and terrifying, a creature of darkness and fangs and power that made the air itself tremble with its presence. The darkness was alive. Lena watched in stunned silence as Adrian's form twisted and expanded, his elegant silhouette stretching into something primordial and vast. Shadows coalesced around him like liquid night, his amber eyes multiplying into dozens of glowing points within the darkness. The temperature in the penthouse plummeted, frost crystallizing along the edges of the doorframe where Lena stood. Julian took an involuntary step backward, his followers faltering behind him. This is impossible," he whispered, his voice stripped of its earlier confidence. The old form was lost centuries ago. Adrian, or the creature that had been Adrian, moved with impossible speed. One moment he stood between Julian and the safe room, the next he was among the invaders, a writhing mass of darkness and teeth. The first vampire didn't even have time to scream before being engulfed. The shadows contracted, and when they released, nothing remained but a fine grey ash that drifted to the floor. Lena pulled Leo deeper into the safe room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the battle unfolding in the hallway. The invading vampires scattered, their earlier confidence shattered by the ancient horror they faced. Julian shouted commands, but his voice cracked with fear. "The children," Julian cried to his followers. "Get the children. They are his weakness." Two vampires broke from the group, darting toward the safe room with supernatural speed. Lena slammed her hand against the control panel beside the door, remembering Victoria's instructions. The heavy metal door began to slide shut, agonizingly slow compared to the approaching vampires. They wouldn't make it. The door was too slow, the vampires too fast. Then Adrian was there, his darkness filling the hallway like a flood. The two vampires were yanked backward, swallowed by the writhing shadows. Their screams cut short, replaced by a sound like brittle twigs snapping. The safe room door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, muffling the chaos outside. Lena backed away, cradling Leo against her chest. The baby whimpered, his tiny fingers clutching at her shirt. "It's okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. "He's protecting us." Through the small reinforced window in the door, Lena could see only flashes of the battle, bursts of movement, streaks of darkness, the occasional flare of amber light. The sounds filtered through snarls, impacts against walls, the splintering of furniture, and beneath it all, a deep, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. Minutes passed like hours. Leo had fallen silent, his eyes wide and watchful, as if he understood the gravity of their situation, despite his infancy. Lena stroked his soft hair, humming the lullaby their mother used to sing, more to comfort herself than the strangely calm baby. A tremendous crash shook the entire penthouse. The lights in the safe room flickered but held steady, powered by their independent generator. Outside, something massive had been thrown against a wall with enough force to crack the reinforced concrete. Lena glimpsed Julian through the window, his elegant clothes torn, his face twisted with rage and fear. "You've doomed us all," Julian shouted, his voice barely audible through the thick door. "The council will never allow this. A vampire raising human children. They'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." Adrian's response was lost in the cacophony, but whatever he said made Julian's face contort with fresh terror. The vampire lord scrambled backward, only to be caught by a tendril of living shadow that wrapped around his ankle. Julian clawed at the floor as he was dragged back into the darkness, his nails leaving deep gouges in the hardwood. The battle moved away from the safe room door, out of Lena's limited field of vision. She heard crashes from the direction of the great room, followed by the sound of breaking glass. The floor-to-ceiling windows, she realized. Cold night air rushed through the penthouse, carrying the scent of rain and city lights. Then silence fell, heavy and absolute. Lena counted her heartbeats. 10, 20, 30, before a gentle knock came at the safe room door. She flinched, clutching Leo tighter. Adrian's voice returned to its normal timbre. It's over. You're safe now. She hesitated, eyeing the control panel. Once the safe room was sealed, it could only be opened from the inside. Victoria had been very clear about that. Are they gone? She asked, her voice small. Yes, all of them. A pause. Julian won't trouble us again. Lena shifted Leo to one arm, her free hand hovering over the release button. You changed. I saw you. Another pause. Longer this time. Yes, that's the truth of what I am. I understand if you're frightened. Lena thought about it. She had seen monsters tonight. Real monsters with glowing red eyes who wanted to hurt her and Leo. But Adrian had fought them, protected them. I'm not scared of you, she said, and pressed the button. The door slid open with the same pneumatic hiss. Adrian stood in the hallway, returned to his human form. His expensive suit was torn and stained, his hair disheveled, but his amber eyes were clear and focused entirely on her and Leo. Behind him, Lena could see the devastation of the penthouse, broken furniture, cracked walls, shattered glass from the windows strewn across the floor. Of Julian and his followers, there was no sign except for small piles of grey ash that dotted the hallway and drifted in the breeze from the broken windows. Adrian knelt, bringing himself to Lena's eye level. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice gentle. She shook her head. Leo's okay too. Adrian's shoulders sagged with visible relief. He reached out slowly, as if afraid she might recoil, and touched Leo's cheek with one finger. The baby gurgled, reaching for his father's hand. We need to leave, Adrian said, his expression grave. Julian was right about one thing. The council will send others once they learn what happened here. Where will we go? Lena asked. I have properties they don't know about. Places we can be safe while I negotiate with the council. He stood, glancing toward the broken windows. Victoria will meet us downstairs. She's preparing the car. Lena followed his gaze. Did you throw them out the window? A ghost of a smile touched Adrian's lips. Some of them, yes, but we're on the 50th floor. Vampires are durable, but not that durable. He offered his hand. Come, we need to hurry. Lena took his hand, surprised by how warm it felt. In stories, vampires were always cold. But then many things about Adrian defied the stories. They moved quickly through the ruined penthouse, Adrian guiding them around the worst of the debris. In the great room, the massive windows had indeed been shattered, leaving the night sky open before them. Rain fell in gentle sheets, dampening the expensive carpet. Adrian paused, listening to something Lena couldn't hear. They're coming, he said quietly. More of Julian's followers. We need to take the emergency exit. He led them to what looked like a normal wall panel, pressed his palm against it, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow stairwell. This leads directly to the private garage. Victoria will be waiting. As they descended the stairs, Lena glanced up at Adrian. Those vampires, they called Leo the heir. What did they mean? Adrian's expression tightened. It's complicated, Lena. There are factions among my kind. Some believe that vampires should never interact with humans except as prey. Others, like myself, believe in coexistence. Leo represents something unprecedented, a human child raised by a vampire as a son, not food or a future convert. They're afraid of him, Lena realized. They're afraid of what he represents. Change. The end of their way of life. Adrian's voice softened. But he's just a baby. Our baby. The hour didn't escape Lena's notice. She felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest, despite the danger surrounding them. They reached the bottom of the stairwell. Adrian pushed open another hidden door, revealing a sleek underground garage. Victoria stood beside a black SUV with tinted windows, her expression tense but relieved when she saw them. "Thank God," she breathed, rushing forward to check Leo. "The car's ready. I've packed essentials for the children." Adrian nodded. "Any sign of pursuit?" "Not yet, but the building's security systems detected multiple breaches on the upper floors. They're searching for the stairs." Adrian helped Lena into the back seat, where a car seat had been installed for Leo. As she buckled the baby in, she noticed a duffel bag on the floor containing clothes, diapers, and, her breath caught, her stuffed rabbit from the apartment, the one her mother had given her. Victoria climbed into the driver's seat, while Adrian took the passenger side. The engine purred to life, nearly silent despite its power. "The safe house is 3 hours north," Victoria said, pulling out of the parking space. The garage door ahead exploded inward, metal panels twisting like paper. 3 figures stood in the opening, their eyes gleaming red in the darkness. "Go," Adrian shouted. Victoria slammed her foot on the accelerator. The SUV leapt forward, straight toward the vampires. At the last second, they scattered, but one wasn't quite fast enough. The heavy vehicle clipped him, sending him spinning across the concrete. They burst out of the garage into the rain-slicked streets of the city. Victoria drove with terrifying precision, weaving through late-night traffic at speeds that made Lena's stomach lurch. In the rearview mirror, Lena could see dark shapes moving with inhuman speed, leaping from car to car in pursuit. "They're following us," she said, her voice small. Adrian turned in his seat. His eyes flickered from amber to something darker, the shadows around him deepening. He rolled down his window. The sound of rain and wind filled the car. Adrian leaned out, his body seeming to stretch and distort in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Darkness flowed from his outstretched hand, coalescing into a writhing mass that shot backward toward their pursuers. A scream cut through the night, abruptly silenced. One of the pursuing shapes tumbled from the roof of a taxi, dissolving into ash before it hit the pavement. "2 more," Adrian said, his voice once again carrying that strange, multi-toned quality. Victoria took a sharp turn, tires screeching. Lena clutched the edges of her seat, her eyes fixed on the baby beside her. Leo watched the passing city lights with fascination, seemingly unbothered by the high-speed chase. They crossed a bridge, the river below black and glittering with reflected lights. The pursuing vampires gained ground, one leaping onto the roof of the SUV with enough force to dent the metal. Clawed fingers began to tear at the edge of Adrian's open window. Adrian moved with blinding speed, grabbing the vampire's wrist. For a brief moment, Lena saw the attacker's face, young, contorted with hatred, fangs bared in a snarl. Then Adrian pulled, and the vampire was yanked through the window with such force that his body crumpled like an empty soda can. Before he could recover, Adrian's form shifted, darkness engulfing the attacker. When the shadows receded, nothing remained but grey dust that scattered in the wind. The last pursuer fell back, apparently reconsidering the wisdom of the chase. Soon they had left the city behind, the highway stretching before them into the darkness, rain falling in silver sheets in the headlights. Lena's heart gradually slowed its frantic pace. Leo had finally fallen asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She reached out to touch his hand, reassuring herself that he was real, that they had survived. "Will they keep coming after us?" she asked. Adrian turned in his seat to face her. The shadows had receded, leaving him looking almost human again, though exhaustion lined his face. "Not tonight. But yes, eventually." The council will send others. What will we do? We'll hide for now. The safe house is remote, protected by old magic that even most vampires can't penetrate. It will give us time. He paused, studying her face. Lena, I want you to know that you have a choice. If you wish to leave, to go to foster care, to try to find a normal life, I won't stop you. Lena thought about it. Normal life. School. Maybe a new family. People who would never believe her if she told them about tonight. People who wouldn't understand why she sometimes woke screaming from nightmares about red eyes in the darkness. She looked at Leo, peaceful in sleep. Her brother, the only family she had left. I want to stay with Leo, she said firmly. It won't be easy, Adrian warned. Or safe. I know, but he needs me. She met Adrian's amber eyes. And I think you need me too. Something softened in Adrian's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or a deeper emotion she couldn't name. He nodded once, a gesture of respect rather than condescension. Yes, he said simply. I believe we do. The rain eased as they drove north, the city lights fading behind them. Lena watched the dark landscape pass, forests and occasional small towns. Leo slept soundly beside her, and eventually, lulled by the motion of the car and the emotional exhaustion of the night, she drifted off as well. She woke to stillness. The car had stopped, and pale dawn light filtered through the windows. They were parked before a stone house nestled in dense forest, morning mist curling around ancient oak trees. It looked like something from a fairy tale, not the bright Disney kind, but the older, darker stories her mother used to tell. Victoria was already outside, unloading bags from the trunk. Adrian sat in the front seat, watching the house with an unreadable expression. Is this it? Lena asked, her voice scratchy with sleep. Adrian nodded. My first home. I haven't been here in a very long time. He got out and opened her door, helping her down while Victoria carefully extracted the still sleeping Leo from his car seat. Together they approached the house. It was smaller than Lena had expected, built of grey stone with a steep roof and windows that gleamed like eyes in the morning light. Adrian placed his palm against the ancient wooden door. Something hummed in the air, a vibration Lena felt in her bones rather than heard. The door swung open silently, revealing a surprisingly warm interior. Old furniture, polished wood floors, and a massive stone fireplace that dominated one wall. Welcome home, Adrian said quietly. The next few days passed in a blur of adjustment. The house, despite its rustic exterior, contained modern amenities hidden behind panels of ancient wood. Victoria explained that Adrian had updated it over the centuries while preserving its original character. They settled into a routine. Victoria cared for Leo during the daylight hours while Adrian rested in a room Lena was instructed never to enter. At sunset he would emerge, and the four of them would spend the evening together. An unusual family, but a family nonetheless. On the fifth night, after Leo had been put to bed, Lena found Adrian in the library, a glass of dark red liquid in his hand. He stared into the fireplace, lost in thought. "Is that blood?" she asked bluntly, perching on the edge of an armchair. Adrian looked up, startled. Then he smiled faintly. "Yes. Victoria brings it for me. Medical grade, donated willingly." Lena nodded, absorbing this information. It smelled like iron and something else she couldn't identify. "Does it taste good?" "It sustains me." He set the glass down. "Does it frighten you?" She considered the question seriously. "No. It's just part of you, like how I need cereal and milk." Adrian laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face, making him look younger, more human. A fair comparison, I suppose. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire dance. Finally, Lena asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. What happens now, with the council and everything? Adrian's expression grew serious again. I've sent messages through channels they'll respect, offered terms. We'll know soon whether they're willing to negotiate. And if they're not, then we'll find another way. His voice was firm, resolute. I've existed for centuries by adapting, by finding paths where others see only walls. Leo is my son now. You are under my protection. That is non-negotiable. Lena nodded, satisfied with his answer. She yawned, the late hour catching up with her. Adrian stood, offering his hand. Come, I'll walk you to your room. As they climbed the creaking stairs, Lena felt a strange sense of peace, despite the uncertainty of their situation. At her bedroom door she paused. Adrian, thank you for saving us. He knelt before her, his amber eyes reflecting the soft hallway light. No, Lena, thank you for trusting me with your brother, for showing me that family can be found in the most unexpected places. He hesitated, then gently brushed a strand of hair from her face, a paternal gesture that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. Sleep well, little one. Lena climbed into the large four-poster bed, pulling the heavy quilts around her. Outside, an owl called softly in the darkness, and wind rustled through ancient trees. She thought of her mother, of the life they'd left behind, of the uncertain future that awaited them. But for the first time since that terrible night when everything changed, she wasn't afraid. They had Adrian, the vampire prince who had chosen them, who had fought for them, who looked at a human baby and saw a son. They had Victoria, loyal and kind. They had each other. As sleep claimed her, Lena smiled. Their family wasn't normal. It was extraordinary, and somehow, against all odds, they had found their way home. In the hallway outside her room, she heard the soft clink of Adrian's glass as he sipped his crimson dinner, keeping watch through the long night hours, guardian of his newfound family.